Hello and welcome to your latest episode of the Near Fall here on WFRV. Plus, I am Nick Whitwer. Lonely studio today. It's Tuesday, so no Ben as usual, but Devin is also off for the holiday, so it's just me running the show today, and we've got plenty of wrestling to talk about. Saturday was AEW's World End big pay per view, our final championship match here on the Near Fall of the year. Uh, Raw and SmackDown both were pretty good this week, and we have maybe if we have time, we'll get to a little bit of NXT preview. That's shaping up to be a pretty good show too tonight. But yeah, we'll start with AEW. And listen, we were really close this week to having the channel's first ever successful title defense. I entered Saturday as champion. Clearly, by saying close to a title defense, it was not successful. Your new champion is Ben, so I'm sure on Thursday he'll be able to celebrate. So when we started, we had to put our picks in by Tuesday. We didn't have a show Thursday because of the holiday. Uh, but let's go over some of what happened on the show on AEW Worlds, and we'll start with the ones we weren't able to pick because they didn't have them announced quite yet. Starting with Darby Allen and Gabe Kidd. Darby Allen defeated Gabe Kidd. It continues that story of Allen versus the Death Riders. Gabe Kidd being the extension of the Death Riders, kind of threw Darby Allen down a set of stairs. Pretty much typical match you'd expect from the two of them. Pretty hard hitting, lots of blood. Darby winning obviously is the right choice as he's still looking to go one by one through the Death Riders, and we'll talk more about the Death Riders later on. The other One of the other matches that we didn't know were happening as of Tuesday was the Chicago Street Fight for the AEW Tag Team Championships between FTR and the Bang Bang Gang. Had we had to pick that, it probably would have been a tough choice. They've really been pushing the Bang Bang Gang, and as you know, I mean, Ace Austin is a part of that group, and you've heard on the show a couple times now that I really like Ace Austin as I know him personally. With that said, I probably would have ended up picking FTR anyway. I don't think they're quite ready to give up those tag team belts yet. We'll see who's next for them, if it's more of the Bang Bang Gang or maybe the conglomeration wants to go after the tag titles. There's several tag teams that we could see. Maybe Brodito comes back into the title picture. You've got teams like Jet Speed that don't seem like they're doing a whole lot right now, especially with the Continental Classic tournament over, which we'll talk about here in a little bit too. It really frees up some of these tag teams that were kind of involved in almost a small little singles push for some of those guys, like Kevin Knight, who did beat Fletcher in a match. And speaking of that CC tourney, the semifinals and the finals, both really good matches. Great storytelling throughout this entire tournament too. Um, and this is one of the first ones that we saw that we were able to pick. The Gold League, I had Okada as the winner, or Devin had Okada as the winner. Ben and I both had Fletcher. Ben and I were right. The Blue League, Devin had Claudio. He actually thought Claudio was going to win the whole thing. Both Ben and I had Takeshita. Takeshita ended up winning. Your semifinals, you had Okada versus Takeshita. A lot of people thought maybe that would end up being the final. So kind of surprising that it wasn't. And then you had Moxley and Fletcher, and with the push that they've been giving the Fletcher throughout just the entire year of 2025, from being TNT champion to having a really good performance in this tourney, it kind of felt like he could have been the favorite to win the tournament too. Okada, as you know, won last year, so he was looking to win back to back and stay the unified champion. With that said, Okada, Takeshita, I kind of figured, talking with Ben, off screen, of course, I kind of figured that Okada was going to find a way to cheat in that match. Clearly, there was a screwdriver used that he found, um, not in the turnbuckle itself, but kind of in the part that attaches the turnbuckle to the ring post. Took it out, used the screwdriver on Takeshita, and that's how he ended up winning his match. It makes sense. It lets that rivalry continue. And then the other semifinal, you had Moxley and Fletcher. That one kind of looked like it was going to go either way there for a second, and then Fletcher was looking for that same screwdriver that Okada had used first. That could lead to potential tension between Okada, Fletcher, and Takeshita all at once, kind of bringing all three of the main Don Callis family members into the same story. Moxley winning allows him and Okada, which I believe they said on the broadcast is for the first time. Hard to believe it's for the first time, but that keeps that kind of storyline going between the Don Callis family and the Death Riders. So that keeps that going. And with Moxley winning the tournament and becoming Continental Classic, it kind of makes you think that they had been teasing for Moxley to leave the Death Riders and the Death Riders to turn on him, but I don't know if they will now. Now he's winning again, so we'll see what comes of that. And speaking of the Death Riders, one of the other matches that was on the card that added to the card late here was the Mixed Nuts Mayhem. It was Tony Storm, Roderick Strong, Orange Cassidy, and Mark Briscoe versus the rest of Death Riders without Pac. So that's Daniel Garcia, Claudio, Maria Shafir, and Yuta Wheeler. Um, Again, that was kind of everything you'd expect to see from the Death Riders and the conglomeration up to this point. That's kind of another faction versus faction they've had going on for a while. Uh, Tony Storm's team did end up winning. I probably would have picked that team if that was in our picks. Um, but yeah, simply put, I think that was just they needed something to do, and they found a way to make it interesting and keep people intrigued in it. And then the big talk, or the big match of the night, the AEW World Championship, the Fatal Four Way, MGF, Joe, Samoa Joe, Swerve Strickland, Hangman Page, MJF cashing in his Casino Royale contract. Uh, Look, it was pretty obvious when he cashed in the contract that they kind of almost booked it so that we had the win at that point, and that was pretty much seen through all of us here at the Near Fall with all three of us picking MJF. Now, where Ben ends up winning his championship back from is he did pick the right pin. MJF did pin Samoa Joe. It gets him that little half point tiebreaker. Otherwise, it would have been a tie. So Ben does get his championship. Overall, it'll be interesting to see what they do next with MJF now that he is once again champion to start the year. They could do him versus Hangman as he kind of stole the win from Hangman. They could continue him and Joe if they wanted to. They could do Swerve and Hangman at some point. That little tag team or friendship that they've kind of started to build, that one's going to come crumbling down at some point. They've such good rivals for such a long time, and that steel cage match. Look for them to maybe throughout somewhere in 2026 try to top that match. Um, yeah, overall, really good pay per view. It's probably one of the first shows that of AEW that I've been able to sit down and watch from start to finish, including 0 Hour, which had a good match with Ricochet and GOA versus uh, other parts of the Don Callis family. But with AEW World's End over, we'll see what they do to start the new year. And when we get back, we'll talk some Raw and SmackDown news. And welcome back to the Near Fall Solo Show here with your host, Nick Whitwer. We talked about AEW World's End. Ben won the Near Falls final championship opportunity of the year. Now we're moving on to SmackDown and Raw and some more WWE stuff. Let's go back to SmackDown. The show started with Cody and Nick Aldis kind of discussing um, what the situation with Drew McIntyre would insist. Listen, you can't touch him or you'll get stripped of the belt, that kind of thing. Uh, that led to, I think, another Drew McIntyre attack. Then the show opened for real with a Joe Hendry Christmas Carol concert where he pretty much went after The Miz and led to an impromptu match with The Miz. Uh, Joe Hendry, he's starting to be that comedian character. Not starting to be, but has been the comedian character. We have seen him kind of bounce back and forth now between SmackDown and NXT. With him officially signing with WWE, you have to think he gets moved up to the main roster for good here shortly. Some women's tag team action went on. Flair defeated Lash Legend with Alexa Bliss and Nia Jax fighting at ringside, kind of keeping them, or not them, but kind of keeping both of those teams in the loop for the women's tag team titles, which belong to the Kabuki Warriors right now, who got it from Bliss and Flair. That's probably setting up like WrestleMania isn't too far off in the distance. This is normally about the time we've talked about it before. This is normally about the time where WWE likes to really feature their tag teams and lead to some big tag team, either TLC or ladder match, something of the sort that involves multiple teams, lots of people. Every year they seem to have one. Seems like the women's side might get that this year. Might get one big 6 team, TLC match for the titles. There was a U.S. Open Challenge. We have a new United States champion. Carmelo Hayes got another opportunity against Ilya Dragunov after the last one. You had Tommaso Ciampa kind of interfere and cost Hayes the match. Dragunov gave Hayes another chance, and now Carmelo Hayes took that chance and is your new U.S. champion. Some sportsmanship shown after the match with Ilya putting the belt on Hayes. That was good to see. Will Carmelo Hayes finally get the push that you thought he was going to get a while ago? Again, we've talked about Carmelo Hayes before being, I think, or maybe the first or second pick for one of the shows back when they did the draft following WrestleMania. So to see him finally earn something or win something big and not just feuding with The Miz is good for him. Ilya Dragunov now, that frees him up to go after maybe a world title. Maybe you see him move over the Raw and you let him go after Gunther. The two of them had a crazy good rivalry during their time in NXT. A lot of people, your casual WWE fan isn't going to watch NXT. So maybe they haven't seen that match before. It'd be the first time they see it on the main roster. And that's one that could, potentially go. You could start that at Rumble and you could have that go to WrestleMania. You could have that last all of WrestleMania season if you wanted. Both of them are good enough to do that. We'll see what direction they try to send Ilya Dragon. Solo did a video promo with the MFTs. I think they're still kind of feuding with the Wyatt Six. That one seems to be dragged out. I know a lot of that has to do, I think, with the health of Uncle Howdy or Bo Dallas. Trick Williams had a weird confrontation with Cody Rhodes backstage. That was kind of odd. A lot of NXT talent was on SmackDown this past week. Julia and Kiana James, they defeated Chelsea Green and Alba Fire. That's continuing to build Julia versus Chelsea Green for the Women's United States Championship. I believe Chelsea took the title off of Julia. It seemed like Julia was getting pushed to the moon there for a bit and then just kind of faded. Now she's getting put back into this mid card type scene. Then the big news from SmackDown: Cody, Drew McIntyre had a big confrontation in the ring. Cody's not allowed to touch Drew yet due to suspension. He'll be stripped of the title. But Drew apologized to the ref that he attacked, and by doing so, he was allowed to pick the stipulation for the title match that him and Cody will have next week. Or no, not next week, but next week, I believe on the 9th. It'll be Drew and Cody in Berlin, Germany, in a 3 stages of hell match. That type of thing. It's a rare thing in WWE. It's only happened 5 times ever. The first one was in '01 with Triple H and Stone Cold. Triple H ran it back in '02 with Shawn Michaels. In '09, 7 years after that, was Triple H and Orton. So Triple H is in this a lot. In 2013, you had Cena and Ryback. And then the last time we saw a three stages of hell match was between Johnny Gargano and Adam Cole in NXT in 2019. So it'll be interesting to see what they do here. Typically, with these, it's going to end up where one person's going to win the first one, second person will win the second fall. So that way they go to that third stage. We'll see what the stipulations are with how heated this rivalry has been and has become. I could see maybe a world where the last stage is either in the cell or maybe some sort of stretcher or ambulance match. The first match could just be a normal street fight, and then you get to a second one. It could literally be any any setup of matches here for these three. But this is probably where the rivalry needs. And really, what needs to happen here is McIntyre has to win. I don't love Cody as a champion as it is, but McIntyre needs to win to prove that he's a threat. Because at some point, he can't keep losing these matches and then still be considered a threat for the title. It's just becoming not super believable at this point on his spot. Um, and I think he does end up winning this one. Again, he's had a pretty heated rivalry with Cody for a while now. He's had attempt after attempt at the title. Claims Cody has screwed him out of the title three times in the United States. Now he's challenging him in Berlin. Again, it just comes down to what each stage will be. I think what's going to happen is stage one is going to be a street fight. Stage two will be something a little not meatier in terms of stipulation, but something a little bigger. Maybe they do a steel cage. And then number three, stage three, the final stage, I think that's where you're going to get it'll either be ambulance match, stretcher match, or what I think this rivalry needs to end with the last man stand. The way these two have kind of ambushed each other. Um, Cody went to Drew's home and attacked him while he was meeting with Aldis. I think this has to end with a last man standing match that has Drew McIntyre as the last one standing and your new champion. Also noted, it is a little surprising to see that this is going to take place on a regular SmackDown show, but they will have time to fill as next week for that January 9th show. SmackDown moves to 3 hours. So who knows how long this specific match will be? It'll be the main event of the show. You could see that taking anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half of that SmackDown. So it'll be a time filler, and it should be really entertaining. Again, it's been a long time since we've seen just this type of match as it is, and you're going to get potentially three gimmick matches in one, which should be a lot of fun. It'll be an absolute war. Moving on to Raw now, more Vision news. The Vision kind of kicked off the show, did a promo about how good they are. Paul Heyman talked about the talent that he has in the group now with Austin Theory joining, Logan Paul, and then Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed. CM Punk came out and confronted them as forget what the ruling was, but he knew they weren't going to attack him, or else they wouldn't. Oh, I think Braun Breaker wasn't allowed to attack CM Punk, and they weren't. The Vision as a whole couldn't ambush him, or they would lose the title shot that they get on Raw, the first Raw of the Netflix season next week on Monday. CM Punk basically just said your typical, you wouldn't say those things to my face kind of deal. And that set up a match and more story building later in the show. Then the first match of the show was the Women's World Championship between Stephanie Vaquer, Nikki Bella, and Raquel Rodriguez. Vaquer did end up winning the match. We kind of teased, Devin and I, last time we were on here, kind of talked that maybe this would be time to get the belt off of her for just a second, give someone else a quick moment. Seems like her title, I don't want to say it's lackluster, but it kind of seems like it hasn't really been going anywhere. But her winning, more Judgment Day stuff, her winning this could set the stage to finally go after Maybe whoever wins the Rumble later this month will go after her. Ripley wins the Rumble, or heavy favorite Bianca Belair. If Bianca wins, I imagine they're waiting with Jade Cargill on SmackDown. Either way, I mean, I'm excited to see Bakir one keep the championship, and two, who's her next opponent will be. I don't think it should be Nikki Bella anymore. She's had two attempts. That should be her last one. Kabuki Warriors gave a promo. They're kind of building and teasing the tension between Asuka and Kairi Sane, with Asuka cutting her off before a brawl with Rhea and Io. Those two teams, again, those two teams with Lash Legend and Nia Jax and Alexa Bliss and Charlotte Flair all seem like they're headed towards a really big, some sort of multi-team TLC ladder match that coming and coming soon. Gunther continued his storyline or his character work of everybody just kind of hates him now because he retired John Cena. He went up against John Cena's number one fan, R-Truth, and kind of forced him to tap out. And then back to the Vision stuff, more Vision stuff. It was Rey Mysterio. He's had a little bit of run in with them now. So it's Rey Mysterio versus Austin Theory, who was the man. The match was going fine. It looked like Rey might actually win, and then Logan Paul came in, caused a DQ, and a 2-on-1 beatdown ensued until Penta made the save. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with Penta and Rey. Again, just making sure that Penta and Rey Fenix tag with everyone and anyone but each other. It doesn't make too much sense to me, but that's then another Maxine Dupree and Becky Lynch promo. I'm pretty sure they're going to have a title match on the first Raw on Netflix of the year. And then we saw a World Tag Team Championship came out. AJ Lee, the clever name for AJ Styles and Dragon Lee versus the Usos. The Usos won. Devin was right. They did win by the end of the year on the last Raw of the year. The Usos won their title back. But really, the story here now, it is the Usos' ninth tag team, and it seems like they're kind of turning heel, both of them. There were some moments where they didn't necessarily cheat, but they definitely weren't as squeaky clean as other wins. But this really frees up AJ Styles, who rumor has it is retiring in 2026. So this opens him up to have a similar year-long retirement tour that similar to what John Cena had. So we'll see what comes of it. And that's all we have on Raw and SmackDown. After the break, we'll preview NXT a little bit tonight and maybe preview some of that Raw on Netflix card on the 5th. And welcome back to the Yearfall here on WFRV Plus. We wrapped up Raw and SmackDown, and let's talk a little NXT tonight. Looks like a pretty half decent show. The NXT North American Championship between Ethan Page and TNA's Moose is going to take the stage. It should be a good one. I don't see Moose winning as much as I like Moose and as talented as he is. Ethan Page seems like he's going to keep the title. You'll have Ricky Saints and Javon Evans. They'll keep their little rivalry going after Ricky Saints cost Javon Evans versus Oba Femi after he won the Iron Survivor match. JC Jane's taking on Ren Sinclair. Joe Hendry will have a New Year's Eve concert, so we'll see what comes of that. I'm sure that will lead to a match with somebody. Maybe Thea Hale gets involved. Brad Baylor, Ricky Smokes will face OTM. And then we'll have the Speed Championship tonight, too, between Lexus King and Tavion Heights. Will Tavion Heights win his back-to-back Speed Championship, or will Lexus King take it? We'll see. They also have New Year's Evil coming up on, I believe, January 6th is going to be New Year's Evil. We'll see Tatum Paxley versus Izzy Dame. Women's North American Championship, Thea Hale, Blake Monroe. We've seen back-to-back matches now where the finish has been kind of spotty, not necessarily a concrete finish. So now maybe we'll finally, see a real ending, a real winner when they face off on New Year's Evil. JC Jane will face Kendall Gray after Kendall Gray won her Iron Survival match. For that'll be for the women's championship, and we'll have Oba Femi versus the TNA X Division champion Leon Slater for the NXT championship. I don't think Leon Slater's going to win that match, but that I mean it should be a good showcase so that fans can really see what you can do. And we'll keep things going. The Raw January 5th card. It's going to be a Stranger Things crossover on Netflix. Don't really know what that's going to mean, but we'll see a World Heavyweight Championship between CM Punk and Braun Breaker. We'll see the Women's Intercontinental Championship between Maxine Dupree and Becky Lynch, and there'll be a WWE Women's Tag Team Championship between Rhea Ripley and Io Sky versus the Kabuki Warriors. So a lot of good big title matches coming up for that show. I'm sure more will be added to that show as well. Again, I'm interested to see what this Stranger Things crossover is going to be like. I'm hoping it's not like the Miz and LA Knight's zombie match from a few years ago, or the Slim Jim, or the not the Slim Jim, but the Mountain Dew Midnight Pitch Black between Bray Wyatt. Hopefully, it's not overly gimmicky. I feel like it will be, but it is interesting to see what will come of that. And then just touching on 2026 a bit, the Royal Rumble's coming up. Names like Jericho have been mentioned for it, Bianca Belair on the women's side. There's a lot to look forward to coming up in 2026. We'll have more of a 2026 preview episode coming up this Thursday between Ben and I, both here in studio. And until then, this has been the Near Fall. Keep your shoulders off the mat, and we'll see you next time.